if you're suffocating from the pressures of life, I can help you live a metamorphic life. My dad was a welder and fabricator most of my life, and he taught me a little bit about steel. One thing he taught me was that tempered steel was very different than regular steel, and that tempered steel was used in weapons and tools, and that it went through a very important process to give it a certain resiliency and strength that regular steel did not have. My dad passed away a number of years ago, and after he passed away, I was writing about this topic one day, and so I thought I better do a little bit of research and find out some more information, because I didn't quite understand all that there was. I really want to know how much stronger or different tempered steel was. I understood a little bit of the process, which I'll tell you about in a moment. I stumbled across a really profound article, a little technical, in Popular Mechanics online. In this article, they described a test between soft steel or untempered steel and tempered steel. And they took two rods, each about 10 inches long, 1 inch in diameter, and hung weight from these rods. The rods stretched a very tiny fraction of amount with each pound that was hung onto those rods, but nothing was really noticed till that weight became very substantial. And there came a point that the rods would be disfigured. There was so much weight that at some point they could not return to their original shape. And then a certain amount of weight beyond that was the breaking point. The soft steel was tested and found to hold about 40,000 pounds before it was elongated and disfigured and couldn't return to its original shape. At 65,000 pounds, that rod broke. The soft steel, it crushed under the weight of the test. So the tempered steel was put to the same test, and it was found that it could handle 215,000 pounds before it became disfigured and elongated and wouldn't return to its original shape. And it could handle a load of over 240,000 pounds before it broke. Think about that for a moment. We have regular steel and tempered steel, and the tempered steel had 4 times the strength and capacity for resilience, which is really that returning to the original shape, bouncing back to that original function and design, and not permanently damaged from the weight and the stress. So what is the tempering process? What does that mean, tempered steel? The process that a blacksmith uses to temper steel is pretty interesting. Tempered steel goes from the fire and the heat into a cooling process. Now, sometimes that cooling process is slow and long, and sometimes it goes from the fire and it's immediately quenched in water and cooled rapidly. And so there is a number of cycles that tempered steel is taken, that a blacksmith, when working with that metal and steel, it's the classic vision of a blacksmith in a forge hammering that metal or the blade of some sort or the tool on the anvil, putting it into the fire and then throwing it into a bucket of water and into the fire and beating it and back into the water. Life throws a lot at us, and many of us will find that you feel like you are in a fire and you are going to die, or quenched in water and you're going to drown. I don't know how long you've lived or what circumstances you've experienced, but I know in my own life I have experienced many trials and challenges that were at the time very overwhelming and seemed more than I could bear. But I often thought of this process of tempered steel. Through the trials and difficulties that I faced, I determined that I would be like tempered steel. You know, the cliche is, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's not exactly true. It doesn't just happen naturally. You have to yield to that process. You have to be willing to change. You have to be willing to soften, to perhaps deal with character issues, embrace more humility and patience and kindness. Usually it is a crushing process for our character and our pride, and for the natural tendencies that we have. And these fires and waters can produce an incredible amount of character in us. I offer this to you today in whatever hardship you're facing, because the difference between tempered steel and regular steel is not only the strength that it can endure, but it has a greater resiliency, the ability to handle that stress and return to its original shape. But even more than that, those two metals side by side to the naked eye look the same, but only under the microscopes and only when one examines the atomic structure will you see that there is a difference. And so you may look at me and someone else next to me and perceive no differences. But it's only upon close examination, it's only under the stresses of life and under weight that you will see a difference between me and the person that I'm standing next to, and what I can bear and what I'll come through, and how I will use whatever situation I'm faced with to transform my life. Now, I have a strong Christian faith. I believe in a personal God. And so for me, it is been maybe easier to imagine a creator or a designer at the helm, in the sense of being intentional to some degree with the things that happen in my life. I imagine that blacksmith, someone with great plans for my life, crafting me to be prepared for those days ahead. You may not have that same view, but I can guarantee you that when you're faced with difficulties in life, to even begin to entertain the idea of that could be a powerful way to get through those circumstances. To imagine that perhaps there is a greater hand at play, working something in you, looking to develop your character, to distill the great qualities of who you are and break off the impurities, which is what that refining process is. I know somebody needs to hear this today, and it's on my heart to share. And if this has impacted you or resonates in any way, please comment, please share this video. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to sharing more in the days ahead. Thank you so much.